When people talk about footballing fairy tales, the success is usually organic. Raith Rovers League Cup win and subsequent European run, Aberdeen winning 2 European trophies, including victories against Bayern Munich, Real Madrid and Hamburg, both nearly achieving promotion to the Premiership despite being semi-professional, but one fairy tale run that the media like to bring up is the story of Gretna FC. They paint it as a village side, getting a mad millionaire to fund their adventure, but it's this reasoning that is why they should never be used as an example. An example that arguably exemplifies the issues with not only Scottish football, but modern football as a whole. So in this video, I'll be looking to the dramatic rise and collapse of Gretna FC. Gretna were founded in 1946, and for most of their existence, they played amateur and non-league football, but not in Scotland. As Gretna is located on the border of England, and I mean on the border, a small river separates the two, the team played their games in the Northern League, with their highest placing being in the Northern Premier League, the 7th tier of English football. They had some appearances in the FA Cup first round, but they were your typical non-league side, just sort of getting on with life. In both 1993 and 1999, they applied for SPFL membership, but were rejected both times. It wasn't until 2002 that their fortunes would change, however, with Adrionians going bust, a space had opened up in the Football League. Gretna would be successful, this time beating out Airdrie United, who would go on to buy their way in by taking over Clydebank, Gala Ferrydean, Preston Athletic, Cove Rangers, Huntly and Edinburgh City. This was at a time where Gretna had an average attendance of about 100, and many of those fans felt that the Northern Premier League was of a higher standard than the Scottish 3rd Division. This would change, however, as English businessman Brooks Mileson decided to purchase the club. Brooks Mileson was born in Sunderland in the northeast of England. He made his money in the construction industry before expanding into insurance. He would later sell these companies for £17 and £48.6 million according to The Sun. I know, it's The Sun, but he had a supposed net worth that peaked at £75 million. With a lot of money to his name, he had plenty to give to the sport that he loved, football. Carlisle, Dundee United, Ayr, Dundee and Berwick all had their supporters' trusts receive donations from the businessman, along with being an honorary vice president of Stockport County's supporters' trust, and was a personal sponsor of the Northern League. In 1992, he failed in his attempts to buy his favourite club, Carlisle United, but in 2002 he was able to purchase Gretna, and this is where the so-called fairy tale story begins. It started off slowly with their first season in the 3rd Division with a 6th place finish, which, for a first season, is respectable. It's something that you expect. This would be followed by a 3rd place finish, missing out on promotion by 9 points. Back then there was no playoffs, it was just the top 2 teams going up. 2005, however, is when it really ramps up. A 98-point season won them the league. They lost only 2 games and scored 130 goals. The next season, when they were in the 2nd Division, they got 88 points, again enough to win the league. This wasn't their only success, as in the Scottish Cup, they went on an incredible run. In the first round, they beat Preston Athletic, then they beat Cove Rangers, then St Johnstone, Clyde, St Mirren and Dundee to make it to the Cup final. They would lose this game to Hearts on penalties, however, but this meant that they qualified for the UEFA Cup. Their European tour, however, would not last. A 5-1 defeat at home, and by home I mean Motherwell, a bit far away, and a 2-2 draw away against Irish side Derry City saw them not get past the second qualifying round, but this let them focus on the 1st Division instead. Unlike the previous 2 seasons, where they robbed their way to the titles, Gretna's financial advantage was a lot smaller, with much larger clubs being in the division. They ended up in a tight battle for the league title, and at the time, the only promotion spot. Their rivals in this were St Johnstone. James Grady would be their hero, as the winning goal the final day away at Ross County meant they would pip St Johnstone to the title by 1 point. They had completed what they set out to do. They had made it from the bottom to the top. There was no sign of this incredible rise stopping, right? Right? That's not gone well now, has it? What on earth went wrong here? Well, Gretna had become Scottish football's Icarus. They flew too high and now they were going to plummet. First, we need to look at infrastructure. With the Scottish Premier League splitting off from the Football League in 1998, they set a rule that stadiums had to hold a capacity of 10,000 seats. This was until 2005, where they reduced it to 6,000. This was due to Inverness having to play games all the way in Aberdeen. Gretna played their games at Raydale Park, which only has a capacity of 1,030 with a total of just 138 seats. I don't think that meets the regulations. This meant they had to play their games at Fir Park in Motherwell, about 75 miles from Gretna. This meant they would be required to build a 6,000-seater stadium, but Milestone had plans in place to build a stadium on the outskirts of the town, with green technology such as geothermal pitch heating and rainwater capture, alongside wind and solar for powering the stadium. Now, the issue with building a 6,000-seater stadium in Gretna is, where do you get 6,000 fans from? Gretna itself only has 3,000 people living in it, and when it comes to fans from further afield, they have other local options such as Annan Athletic, Queen of the South or Carlisle United. This was only the beginning of their issues, with the club basically being a plaything for Brooks Milestone. They were heavily reliant on their owner. Milestone had debts he could not pay. This trickled down to Gretna, where on the 18th of February 2008, it was revealed that players and staff had not been paid, leading to resignation from coaching staff, players leaving, and as they had to go into administration, a further 10-point reduction. This, mixed with not having a squad capable of the top flight, meant they finished on an almost record-breaking low points total of just 13 points. Even with their points deduction, they would still have finished 17 points off of Kilmarnock in 11th. Things would get even worse, however, as through a mixture of personal debts and falling health, Brooks Milestone withdrew all funding, leaving the SPL to pay the players for the rest of the season. This would be it for Gretna. With debts totaling £4 million, they would initially be demoted back down to the 3rd Division, but as no buyer was found, they resigned from the Football League on the 1st of June, being replaced by local rivals Annan Athletic. The inevitable would come on the 8th of August 2008, as the club would be liquidated. So what happened next? Fans of the club set up Gretna 2008, who would join the East of Scotland League, but to start off, would play their games in Annan as Raydale Park had been sold to a development company. They would buy the ground back, however, and have since kept football alive in the town, becoming founding members of the Lowland League in 2013, but in recent years look likely to drop down, finishing near the bottom the last few seasons and are currently down at the bottom. It is unsure whether they would go into the South of Scotland League or back to the East of Scotland League, it just depends on who comes up. Brooks Milestone, however, would never recover from his illness and was found dead at his home on the 3rd of November 2008. He had personal debts of £8 million. This story exemplifies what is wrong with not only Scottish football, but modern football as a whole. The idea of a club from a village becoming a businessman's plaything with no plan for any sort of sustainability is not a fairy tale. If anything, it's a nightmare. How must St Johnstone fans have felt seeing Gretna go up and then die within a season at their expense? Saints chairman at the time, Jeff Brown, described the whole ordeal saying, "They talked about living the dream, and some people bought into it while Gretna were promoted, reached the cup final and qualified for Europe. But there was always going to be a day of reckoning. When Gretna beat us to the title last year, I was painted as the bad guy for saying in public what SPL chairmen were saying in private. But why pull the wool over fans' eyes? I was seen as the baddie, and critics said it was down to envy. But no one in my time at St Johnstone has gone unpaid for your money. No one wanted them in the SPL, and no wonder given what followed. It has been a mess. As far as I'm concerned, people were misled by an ego tripper who was looking after number one. The debts have stacked up and some very good people could be facing financial ruin. How many of Gretna's creditors are ordinary folk who have been taken to the cleaners? That really infuriates me. They have been taken for a ride, and it seems to happen time after time in football. Gretna's situation may be happening again, as we see Edinburgh City facing financial difficulties, and it's happening in the non-league game as well, with clubs like Darvel, Johnstone Borough and East Kilbride throwing cash around in the hopes of making it to the SPFL. But what happens when you go that step too far, too soon? That's it for this video. A bit of a somber ending, but hopefully still interesting. Again, leave your thoughts or ideas for videos in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all that usual YouTube stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.